Good morning, parents and everyone watching. Welcome to Choklits. Today we have a really special episode with us here today as we have Jade, one of the co-owners of Choklits. Welcome, Jade. How are you feeling being with us here today?
I'm very excited. Always love to talk to anyone about our journey, anyone who'll listen. So very excited, Path.
No, I am equally as excited to be here and I cannot wait to get started. But, however, before we get into the details of you being in the industry, I wanted to gain a little bit of insight of your journey to this point. So obviously we know that you've had experience senior roles in Ernst Young and NAB. You've also had senior roles at NAB. What was the corporate life like? Like, what did you like about it and what was it like?
Corporate life is excellent for training, for building skills in negotiation, skills in, I suppose, learning how business operates from a very, 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 very large scale. Obviously, NAB being one of Australia's biggest banks, it deals with billions and billions of dollars and has 25 or more thousand employees. So it makes a good grounding for experience in dealing with things like bureaucracy, dealing with a number of different people, and having access to a lot of different, I suppose, training and exposure to things that I suppose that not working in corporate doesn't give you. So I think I really enjoyed my time in corporate. I learned lots of things, and I think the skills that I learned have been so valuable now that I run a business.
Oh, definitely. And education is something that every little bit that you gather from everywhere helps in building you and defining you as a person. And then the practical experience is where you get to implement it and shape yourself forward. So touching more based on the education side of things, I see that you have degree in business HR, accounting, diploma in children's services. I wanted to ask you, how did that blend of business and heart come together in your education? Like, how did your education lead you to where you were in those senior positions?
Okay, so it was a bit of a journey. When I first went to university, I actually wanted to do occupational therapy with children. So I actually started doing the founding course, which was arts, for any course to go and do science or medicine or anything like that. However, as I went through the first year, I started developing a passion for business. Although I still had a passion for children, I felt like long-term the business passion was going to be something that was closer in my heart. So I went down the business avenue and I majored in human resources. And then after finishing that, decided that I would go out into the world of corporate, and I managed to be the first ever trainee at Ernst Young. They developed the program for me in the small enterprise area. However, one thing was missing. I didn't have my accounting degree. So I started the traineeship and went and did a master's in accounting whilst also doing the traineeship. So that was again a huge learning curve in a massive corporate, in an industry that I knew I was going to learn a lot about, whilst also learning the fundamentals and I suppose the key avenues of what accounting is all about and how to balance a P&L and a balance sheet. Absolutely. And I ended up going into the auditing space where you go into several different businesses and audit their books. So I learned a lot about how P&Ls operate, how businesses operate, how capital operates, how you talk to a CEO, how you talk to a CFO, and I was doing that at 24, going into big organisations as a trainee. I can't even believe now that they actually let me in the office to go and have these conversations, but I'm so very grateful that they did. And I think a lot of my, I would call it business resilience now, is the reason why, because although it was very scary at the time, the more you do it, the less scared that you get to go and have conversations with very senior corporate people. So that was from that education perspective. I actually didn't do my diploma, Cert 3 and diploma in children's services until I actually purchased Choklits.
Okay.
So I guess before we get into that, the reason I had a number of mentors, and I think mentors are super important in business, no matter what stage you are, whether you're beginning or I have mentors now in 10 years of running a business, that they said, if you go into a business in an industry you know nothing about, which I didn't, you need to have credibility, and the only way to get that credibility is to get some experience really quickly and understand the fundamentals of what happens. And so when although I became an approved provider, which you have to obviously run childcare services, and I learnt a lot and I knew all the rules and regulations, I still felt that I needed to know what an educator needs to learn, what they need to experience, and how they educate and care for children in line with what the curriculum and the expectations are at the time. So I knew basically what's the minimum requirement, and then what do I want to add from there. So that's why I went down that path to do that.
Oh, absolutely. And it just hones in the importance of receiving that formal education, but then it also touches base on the fact that it's not simply the education that's important. You need to have that practical experience. You need to have that knowledge of the industry that you're entering in, and having that mentor to guide you through it is absolutely important, no matter what stage of a business that you're in, whether you're starting out or whether you're years deep as you are. So one thing that I was really curious about, as you mentioned, when you did your children's services diploma after you purchased Choklits. So the question that I had for you was there ever a moment when you were working in the corporate life that clicked and was like, this is not for me, I want to get into childcare or the industry, or was it just that you wanted to get into business side of things?
So yes, there was a click moment. My husband Matt, who I run and own Choklits with, was also running his own business at the time, a plumbing business. And I was at NAB, took me to a conference that was all about business and running businesses, and Arnold Schwarzenegger was talking.
Oh, wow, okay.
And he got up and said, you are responsible for your own happiness, and you need to take the risks that you need to take to, run a business or find your passion or do what it is that you love, so that you can, find your path and find your journey. And that resonated with me. And I was by this point at NAB, I was a head of, I could see the path for me, which was, I suppose, climbing up the corporate ladder. However, I also wanted children, I wanted to get married, and in big corporate organisations, as much as they don't want to admit it, it's not very well set up for that. Although now post-COVID, I think it's a lot more, 10 years down the track, it's a lot more flexible, but when I was there, it was very traditional, and I didn't see the path for being able to, I suppose, not have it all, but have the things that I was passionate about, which was family and career. So I then went away and go, well, what is it that I'm passionate about? What is it that I love? And I went way back when I wanted to do occupational therapy with children.
You mentioned that earlier.
And I was like, no, it's the children that I want to get back to. I want to get back to that educational aspect and support and help them. And then that's when I started researching business models. What might that look like? And childcare kept coming up and up and up. And so then I just did a lot more research in relation to that. So that's what then drew me into the world of childcare.
Okay, so that's it's such an interesting journey to follow, how you were at NAB, and then but before that you always wanted to be an occupational therapist, but there's a funny thing that it has a way of coming back to you. So something that you're really passionate about, maybe the universe had it in that the universe wanted you to help and be around families and support them in their learning and development. So it came around and it was always meant to be. So, but coming back to it, so you purchased Choklits, you learned, researched the business models, you got into Choklits.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, what was the first day walking in as a Choklits owner? What was it like?
Very nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
Well, I was super nervous because obviously I had no experience at all in the industry other than an idea, and knew that I was passionate about wanting to do it. I knew every law and rule under the sun because now I was an approved provider.
Yeah.
I didn't have any relationships with anybody walking in, so none of the staff really knew who I was. Didn't know any of the parents. I didn't know any of the children. So and for me, when and my personality, and it's really important to me, relationships are super key in running business. So that was my priority. And walking in, I walked in, I think at the time, we had about 9 to 12 employees only. It was actually a really small service when we purchased it. Yeah. So it wasn't too overwhelming in the fact that it wasn't a lot of people, but at the same time, it was about getting them to, I suppose, trust me, particularly the staff and the parents and the children. Well, who is this person? What credibility do they have? So I was really nervous about that. So I just ended up just spending hours and hours and hours there. And I became pretty much the director and managed over time and managed the service. However, the caveat to all of that is I actually started with 12-month-old twins. Right. So our children were 12 months when I took it over. So they actually were with me when I took over the business as well. So I was equally nervous about leaving the children as well. So there was a number of different facets. So emotionally, it feels like yesterday, but yeah, I was extremely nervous. But now I look back and think, I don't know, sometimes I think, what on earth were we doing? And other times I think it was the best decision of my life. So
and I can only imagine how nerve-wracking it would have been coming into, and all of these new faces around you, they're looking at you as the owner, but you want to be there and you want to create this family, and you want to build this center and grow this forward, and working your way through it, as you mentioned, spending hours and hours there, and then at the same time having your 12-month-old twins, and the emotional tax that would have had on you. Like, I can only imagine how difficult it would have been. But I think I would like to agree with your second part of your statement, that it was the best decision of your life, because you got to be closer to your kids, you got to spend time with them, and while they were growing up, you got to create a model, a company, a organization that is built around children and their development and them growing up at the same time while your children were also growing up there. So I think it was all meant to be. Coming back to our earlier point, it was all meant to be.
I think
but as I mentioned about the part of family, you always mention how Choklits is like your second family. I wanted to gain a little bit more insight on that. What do you mean by that?
Well, I think no matter what type of family that you have, one of the things that was really important to me, particularly when going into the environment and understanding the different dynamics of family, is that I wanted Choklits particularly to be a place where it didn't matter what happened outside the doors. When everyone came in, they felt part of something, part of a community, whether that was staff, children and families, parents, that we were all included, we're all treated the same, that there was nothing in the Choklits realm that wasn't possible. So the part of it for me in terms of family, the things that was really important to create, one of the, I suppose, the founding things for me is why it feels so homely, and the family aspect is when I first walked in the door, a lady called Sue Brewer was the director at the time. Now, Sue had been with the organisation at that point, I'm going to say I'm going to get it wrong, a long time. A long time. And I think one of the things that she just put her arms around me metaphorically and basically said, it's okay, we're going to do this. And any question that I had, and I think I went in with the view, and I think it's really important in business if you don't have the experience to go in and not say, oh, I know everything. I went in and said, I don't know any of the answers. I'm here to learn and grow from you. You guys are all the experts, and we're going to learn and grow and build this, Choklits to where we want it to be together. And they embraced that. Sue embraced me. She supported me. And Jody, who is still with us today, was actually the room leader at the time of the nursery when my children went in there. Oh. So I feel like all those little relationships and connections, just, I have this beautiful woman who's supporting me as going into a new organisation with not a lot of experience, Sue. And then I have another lady, Jody, who's looking after my children and supporting me. And so through those foundations of what it was like when I went in, and I think admitting I didn't know everything and speaking to everyone, saying, I don't have all the answers, but this is what it's like. Yeah. It felt like a true family. And I think one of the things Matt and I often say is you can't see Choklits, you have to feel it. And that's so true from my experience. And that's something that... it's not something you can just create. It has to be felt, it has to be true, it has to be true to your values, and that's why the family aspect, when I talk about that, that's what it means.
Oh, and I can attest to you as someone who's working inside the Choklits family, who is there in the organization, that sense of familiarity, that sense of family is definitely felt all the way from up, all the way to like the rooms with the children, with the teachers. And there's this sense of trust that the team has, that they can rely on their room leaders, they can rely on their educational leaders. So I think having that foundation set up in such a strong way definitely helped you build Choklits, and is going to be absolutely crucial in growing and scaling this brand forward. But before we go into the growing and the scaling, I'm going to bring it back a little bit, because I wanted to ask an example or an anecdote from you when you started at Ringwood as your first center. I want you to share a story with me about a challenge that you faced, a difficulty that you had to overcome, and how did you manage to overcome it?
Oh my goodness, how much time do you have? There was more than I care to say.
Something that our viewers would be very curious about knowing, something maybe that you haven't shared before.
A challenge. Well, one of the key challenges was that next door to Ringwood at the time was a very large, dilapidated building that was an eyesore, and it didn't look safe, and it was attracting some unsavory characters. So one of the challenges for me is that we were having families, although they loved the tours and everything, just didn't feel comfortable with that building next door, didn't like it. So I went on a bit of a one-woman campaign, and I basically hounded the local, the federal MP. I got them to come and visit. I made a lot of noise. It was very challenging because no one had actually achieved getting it knocked down in like 10 years. And I was relentless. I just called, because I knew that was not something our community wanted. That was not something the community wanted next to the childcare service. So in my spare time, whilst running the service, I was having meetings, I was calling. Eventually, I think it took me, I want to say 2 years, 3 years, and it finally got knocked down.
Wow.
Thank you.
Okay, wow.
I ended up featuring in the leader. But yeah, it eventually got knocked down, and now it is a beautiful aged care facility that we have this amazing relationship with them now. But yeah, so that was one of the things behind the scenes. It was probably the biggest challenge, working in relation to, I knew I wanted that. It needed to go for the sake of our community and our business, and you just have to have some tenacity and keep going.
Definitely. Just it puts into perspective again how passionate you were. You saw that no one has achieved the knockdown, you said, in like 10 years,
Yeah.
right? And you knew that fact that no one has been able to do it, but that did not deter you from pursuing it. And the sense of community that you mentioned, it's just, it just gives insight into your mindset when you were in that position and when you were trying to grow Choklits. And the connection to the community, as you mentioned, you and Matt, you have both worked really well together to grow Choklits into this thriving community. As you scaled from one center to two, what was the ideology behind it? How did you get, like, obviously you were at Ringwood, what made you get into the decision of, okay, maybe we could expand to another center? What was that process like?
Well, the process actually started at Ringwood, because when I mentioned earlier, when we took it over, it was only a 52 place center, and we managed to get it full. So we filled at the 52, and we had quite a lot of land that wasn't being utilised. So we decided to do a big extension and increase the licence to 90. So I sort of see the second increase of licence as our second service, and that is probably a time of the most amount of stress I've ever experienced renovating. I can't even. It gives me a little bit of, oh my God, you'd never go and do that again, but I can't believe we did it. So we had a building actually craned in and put together on site. It made quite the spectacle for the children, and they got to see it all unfold. So we did all of that and increased our license, and then we filled that to 90. So once we got to that, and I was running the service at the time as the director, and I felt very comfortable after having run it, that I sort of knew the ins and outs. I sort of had some good experience now. I have the credibility, and we knew that we could, we had a service that our community wanted to be part of and liked. So that's when we started looking for more. And we ended up not just going to 2 and to 3 in 1 year.
Also,
the Surrey Hills and Croydon were bought and purchased in the same, settled in the same year. So it's probably something that I wouldn't do it again. We increased 300% in 1 year. So when, in hindsight, these things just happen and they fall into place, and you just got to make it work. So
how was it like? Excuse me. How was it like suddenly going from a 90-place organization to you said 300?
Yeah.
How was that shift like? And I'm assuming it would have been like really cramming it all in one year would have been chaotic. But how did you manage that? How was the process like?
Well, how did I manage it? I think Matt and I managed it because we had to make it work. I think if you have to make something work, it finds a way of working out.
Needs to be done.
But if I had my time again, I would have probably set more systems in place to ensure that it was a bit more of seamless. I think I underestimated, I know I underestimated the amount of, when you scale, scaling from 1 to 3, you don't really have the concept of what that scale looks like. And so we went from 12 to 30 employees to all of a sudden, now we've got over 120. Your management has to change, your structures have to change, so many things. So I'm not sure that we did manage it very well, but we're here, and I think we had to learn a lot of lessons really quickly, and we had to be changing our mind and be really dynamic but you have to back yourself, and if it's a bad decision, it's okay. You just got to go to the next one. And for me, I think I learned a lot around myself. I realised I was a lot more capable and resilient. But I think it's like anything. If you're put in situations where you have to actually make sure that they work, particularly in business, and you have a lot of people relying on you. I mean, I had all these new staff. I had all these new families and parents. So it's one of those things that failure is really not an option. I think we made a few mistakes and had a few false starts, but you can't get down on yourself in relation to that, and you just got to keep going. So I think I thought I knew realised I didn't. Realised I didn't know as much as I needed to scale, but now I do feel like I might know some more about scaling.
And I don't think there's any business in this world that exists without any sort of like hiccups. And I think one of the most successful businessmen, women in this world, they are defined by their ability to deal with failure and how they manage to grow forward. And that is something that I've definitely, being a part of this organization, observed, that how connected all three services are, which is something that I'm sure everyone watching would be curious about as well. Like, you had, as you mentioned, you were really extremely successful in building that culture and that second family in Ringwood. Was there a secret, or like was there a process in place? How were you able to replicate that sense of family in Croydon as well as in Surrey Hills? How did you manage to bring them all together?
I think it comes down to being very clear as an organisation what your values are and what we stand for. So obviously we have our pillars, and they essentially act as our values, and they act as our guiding decision matrix. So for us, by making sure we have those in place constantly, and we're coming back to those as our, I suppose, really clear on the values that we have as an organisation and company. So when you talk, you make everyone aware of what they are, then the replication just happens because the culture is founded on those key values that we want to operate. So that's why I suppose, as you say, it's replicated across the three, because as a company and organisation, we stay very true to those. I think the other thing is that Matt and I, as owners, are lucky in the fact that we are small enough to be able to be present a lot, opposed to perhaps other bigger organisations, that allows us to be part of the culture as well. It's not just sitting on the ivory tower sending off emails every now and then. We're very much involved, and I think, well, I hope that everyone sees that, and because we do live to those values, I think hopefully that shines through, and then everyone knows what's expected if you work for Choklits and the company. Yeah,
and I think touching base on that one again, the fact that this is not the first time I'm having a conversation with Jade and Matt, because every time they come to the service, they actually go to the rooms, they take a look, and they talk to the educators there. And I think that is really important, as you mentioned, that you are able to be involved in all of these processes. So thank you so much for sharing that. That helps me understand a lot more as to your thinking and your mindset in operating a business. But I want to now come back a little bit again. As we mentioned, your time as the service director, that your twins were 12 months old.
Yep.
I want to ask you, how does leadership look like as a mom and as a business owner, and all three of those things combined in one? How does leadership look like for you?
So I think, again, as a leader, you have to be really clear about what you stand for and who you are. And I think it probably not one of those is isolated. I believe my leadership value is really about listening around 90% of the time and talking 10. So I really want to understand what's going on from everyone else's point of view, because I am going to have extremely different view than you unless I ask what's in your head. I'm not a mind reader. And I think people who don't ask and dictate don't achieve a lot, because you actually don't know whether that solution is actually the right one. Do we get it wrong? Absolutely. I think in isolation though, for me, pivoting between running a business, being a mum, the leadership itself doesn't change. It's just you got to meet the person where they are. So I meet my children they're now 10. At a 10-year-old level, I meet my educators at their level. And obviously, Choklits has a really diverse workforce, and we have different skills, we have different experiences, different cultures, and you have to meet people where they're at. You can't assume anything is true, I believe, because people will have different perceptions about different things. So as a leader, the key thing for me is to listen and be compassionate, but you have to keep people accountable as well. Absolutely. And I think having a model of accountability and responsibility, I actually find really difficult. It's not something that is natural to me, but I do know that it is a key point in leadership that you have to keep those around you accountable to live to whatever it might be, the agreed company values, the roles that you perform, keeping children safe, and the same with my children. Like, there has to be some form of accountability with them as well, and that's what we have to do as leaders. But I think one of the things that I think it just comes down to listening. At the end of the day, I feel like I do a lot of listening. Not today, I'm doing a lot of talking, a lot of listening, and that was some feedback I had in the corporate world. The more you rise as a leader, the more you need to be listening and not talking.
Definitely.
So you find way better solutions, you can collaborate, and you can get far better outcomes quicker if you listen and understand the other person's point of view and perspective to be able to work out where the gaps are. Now, in saying that, and sometimes in running childcare, we are highly regulated, we have a lot of laws, and sometimes there is no negotiation, we just have to do it. So it's just all in the messaging.
100% agree. And I think we can all note that down today, the 90-10 rule, 90% of listening and 10% of talking. And I think if you go by Jade's example, that can lead us to some really great places, both professionally and personally. So Jade, thank you for sharing that. I also wanted to then understand from you, what do you think is something, not just in in a workplace, not just in childcare, but workplaces in general, what do you think that workplaces can or need to do in your experience to help support the workers better? What is something that you have implemented over the years that you have seen tangible results in?
Yeah, well, I think definitely the listening, but I guess in my experience, when I came into the childcare industry, one of the things I noticed was that if I called someone into the office, there would be almost panic attacks before they would come into the office. There would be tears, and I couldn't understand why, because typically I like to have a very open dialogue with all of my team, and I was calling them into the office not because to tell them off. I was actually wanting to have a conversation. I wanted to know what their thoughts were or give them positive feedback. So it took me a long time to understand, and I think every industry, if we're talking all business, every industry will operate differently. However, I think on the whole, if you have leaders in the workplace, particularly middle managers, that are more interested in, I suppose, getting the result no matter what and taking credit for it, which obviously can happen, I think you will lose your people along the way. I feel for me, what could organisations learn, and I hope one of the things that we do learn is you need to build a culture within your organisation that everyone wants to be part of. You need to build them up to the point where they can leave because they've got to a point where they are ready for the next thing, but you've built a culture so good that they want to stay. And I think that's one of the things that for me is a key principle, and I think a lot of organisations could learn from that. And supporting people in their journey to whatever it may be. I mean, not everyone's going to be with you forever, so I think it's important to support them whilst they're with you and get the best result for everyone. It's not about, the best leaders aren't necessarily those that are like, I'm a leader, I'm responsible for this. It's really about asking your team what they need. And I think that's one of the things that I hope Matt and I do really well. We're always asking what they need to our management team. And now we're a lot bigger. We don't interface necessarily with every single staff member, but that I know filters down from our management team because we we ask them, and then that goes down the chain.
Yeah, building that culture, definitely I can agree. Like, it resonates so much with building that successful organization and making the workers feel like they're heard. And I think that is absolutely crucial to the success of an organization. Definitely. I've also heard you say that children deserve more than care. According to you, what is something that is very important for children in their early years?
Oh, so many things, but I think a few fundamental things. I think every child needs to feel safe. They need to have opportunity to learn, and they also need to feel valued and be a valued citizen.
Definitely.
And I think that for me, childcare, obviously in the word, and that's what we call it, is one of the things, should go without saying, care. But I think there's a lot that goes with that. Education. And I think that people think, well, how can you educate children under 5?
Yeah.
You've got babies, they're just playing with, whatever it might be. But I think the key thing, and there is a lot of science and research behind it around the development of the child's brain by the time they're 5. And one of the things is making sure that with our programs, that children are exposed to fine motor skills, they're exposed to responsibility, particularly in kindergarten, packing your bag, knowing where your belongings are, how do you resolve conflict with a fellow classmate, all the way from toddlers starting to learn how to go to the toilet and understanding responsibilities for belongings as well, but also food and hygiene. I think for me, it's what goes into the care that every child should have is that they should be exposed to skills that allow them to be the best version of themselves.
Yeah.
And I think that should just be, that it doesn't matter how old they are, that you need to allow them to have their path.
Yeah.
And know that not every child is the same. I know particularly at school, everyone lines up, you've got to go to class, you've got to do all of those things. And in childcare, there's a little bit of that sometimes with safety, but I think you really do have to let children grow and develop at their own pace, and knowing that you have educators that understand that and that we cater to that is really important. So I think care is this tiny little word, but underneath it sits education, trust, safety, and respect. And I think they're all the things that we need to be able to provide to children so that they can be the best versions of themselves no matter how old they are.
I don't think a small statement could have been explained and more fleshed out better than this one. And I could not agree with you more, because an early years learning center, a childcare center, is so crucial for a child in terms of their school readiness. And it is so much more than the child just knowing how to spell letters. They learning how to count. It is about their social development in a childcare center. And this is how sometimes that's what differentiates a sessional kinder from a childcare center, is that a childcare center is essentially a simulation of the outside world for the children. They are very independent in a childcare center, of course in a very structured environment, but in a childcare center they are able to interact very freely with the tables and the sections that they are there. They are able to interact very freely with the friends that they have there. It's a simulation of the world outside. And a good quality of care in a childcare center is what defines their school readiness and how they will either survive or thrive in school. So I could not have explained that any better than yourself. Coming back on that, I wanted to ask you, as you mentioned, the importance of culture and making sure that the team is very strong. According to you, what separates a good educator from a great one?
A great educator is someone that understands fundamentally every child that they have in their room. They have exceptional relationships with families and the staff around them. They're an extremely great communicator, and they are always thinking about what's next for the children. So a great educator is someone who is looking at, okay, they've achieved this, what's next? Or they're not developing quick, they're not developing in line with, others.
Yeah.
Why is that? What could we change? Looking at individual needs of the children, but also I think an exceptional educator is a leader. They don't have to be a people leader. I think that's people often say leadership, talk about leadership as like it's people's leadership. I think a leader is somebody who leads through their passion, their, their interests and what they really are wanting to achieve with those that are around them. And then that comes out. I don't think it's really important to separate the two. And I think a great educator is somebody that, like yourself, Parth, is always looking to improve, is always looking for the way to make children thrive, but yourself survive and the team thrive, and your team to thrive as well. So I think a great educator is really a selfless educator, is someone who's really thinking about the outcomes of everyone else, not for themselves. And I think that is extremely evident when you look at what a great educator looks like.
Definitely, and I think that's a small little cheat sheet for all of our educators that are watching, according to Jade, what a great educator is. So we touched upon at the beginning about the importance of education, not just for children but for adults as well. As yourself, you you hold so many degrees, and it seems that you really value education. So getting a little bit more insight on that, I want to ask you, if you had the option, or if you were in the position to change anything about the training systems or like the education that the educators in our industry receive, what would you change, or what would you include?
What would I include? I think there needs to be way more practical. Way more practical. I think a lot of the training organisations send them on these 1 or 2 placements, and it's all textbook, and then all of a sudden off you go, you're ready to go. And I think that's one of the things that I would love to see change. That's why we do a lot of traineeships at Choklits, and I think the traineeships is because it's so very practical and hands-on. I think that those that do the traineeships end up probably having way more experience than those that just do textbook and then go into the classroom. So for me, what I think needs to change from a educational point of view for any training people listening is you need to flip it on its head. There has to be way more practical, and the theory, yes, it's important. Do they need to know the rules and regulations? Absolutely. But they are also very readily available at every service. You have a number of people at the service that can train and educate them on those. The practical aspects, because you don't learn unless you do.
Yeah, 100%. And we have to understand how many times a lot of these people who have just received formal theoretical knowledge, suddenly they are in a room and they're in an environment that does not really allow for many mistakes. They're dealing with children. So I think it even strengthens furthermore your point of having leaders in a room, having leaders in educators, and having leaders across the service that can identify a potential in an educator, and then they can lead them and guide them forward and tell them things that maybe the books or the assignments that they've done, staying up all night, maybe those weren't able to tell them. So I think I definitely agree with you on that one. That is something that needs to be included at least. So thank you for that, Jade.
Okay.
Going forward, now we've had a very long discussion, and it's been such a journey going from your days at NAB to your first service, experience at Ringwood, and then growing to Surrey Hills and Croydon. I want to ask you, if you had to narrow it down to one thing, what is something that you look back at and you are extremely, extremely proud of, something that makes you smile?
Oh, that I'm here. And that we still have them. And then happy to do the interview. Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Look, I'm not going to lie, it was really, really hard. And there were times that I thought to myself, what have we done? we literally put our house on the line to do Ringwood. So I am proud that Matt and I made it work, but not only that we've learnt so much along the way. And I know it's not one word because it's impossible, but I think I'm proud that I've come out the other side and that we did it. And the hard times are certainly what has made the good times more sweet.
Oh, that's, you can see sometimes when you're like recording stuff and while you're watching this, I really hope that you're able to see just how I am, how true and passionate that statement was. It really came on your face, like how much that means to you. So thank you so much for sharing that with all of us. Now that we are here, I want to ask you, where are we headed? So where do you see Choklits in the next 5 years?
Right. Well, I'm not sure if it's top secret, but we have always had plans to grow. And when we started out, I never thought we'd grow for more than one. So now we have 3. I think for me, Path, and it's something that I have to talk to Matt about, but I think for one of the things we need to probably work out, how many can you grow to whilst also maintaining, I suppose, being true to ourselves, being true to our values, and being able to do all the things that we've just spoken about. So I don't know how many that is, but I suppose I would like to see over the course of the next few years adding a few more Choklits to our growing brand and company and community. But I think where it ends and where it stops, it really does depend on when we start feeling compromised, that Matt and I aren't able to still be able to inject what we do today with the 3 and the people in our community. That's when we would look to go, okay, we've got enough. But yeah, I think there's room for at least, a few more.
A few more. We'll just leave it at a few more, and then we'll explore it in a further episode maybe. But I think the fact that you have that vision, and it's not just like, growth, more. You have that idea of you still want to be involved in the process. You still want to be connected to the centers that you own. I think it's just really nice to see from a person who's in your organization and is like looks at you go around the centers and have a direct feedback communication chain with the owners of Choklits. So I think that's a really good thing. Going forward, I think it would be the last question that I have for you. And I think it could be a very important one.
Okay.
If, again, it's a very hypothetical scenario, if hypothetically your children were to run Choklits in the future, what is the one piece of advice that you would give them, and they can look back at this video and be like, that's what mum said?
Okay. My advice is they can't go and start at Choklits. They have to go and work somewhere else first. I think you don't know. I think for me, what I find has been an excellent skill set for me in running a business is having experience from other businesses and other practices. I think my advice is get as much skills and as much experience that you can from looking at how other businesses operate, so that you know and very clear on how you want your business to operate.
Perfect. And I think indirectly that's advice for anyone who wants to get into a business as well. You need to have information and knowledge about a plethora of businesses and operations before you can streamline your own. So once again, thank you so much, Jade, for joining us for this episode. It was such an amazing time, and I just feel like we've been, as I mentioned earlier, on a journey and coming back and listening to you talk about your passion and how much Choklits mean to you has really motivated me to push even more as well. So thank you so much for joining us. Pa. We will be doing a quick rapid fire into questions round, so stick around for that, and we will see you soon. Bye bye.